Good morning, students. Today we'll start with branch instructions. We'll try to understand what are branch instructions, right? The mnemonics and the examples related to it, and how these branch instructions will help us in writing in the programs, right? We will see that as part of this branch instructions there. If you see the contents of this one, right, for the branch instruction, the contents what we have is we'll study some of the decision opcodes, some of the decision opcodes which are related to, first one what we studied is something unconditional jumps, right? We'll compare bytes and jump if not equal, right? We'll study, just a minute. Compare bytes and jump if not equal, and also we'll study decrement byte and jump if 0. Jump on bit conditions, call a subroutine, return from a subroutine. As part of the branch instructions, so we will study these subtopics. We'll study these subtopics and we'll try to address all this with mnemonics and how the operations are performed, and also we'll look at the examples associated with those. Right? The first, if you see, all the jump instructions what we have, the jump instructions, the call instructions are generally referred as branch instructions, right? A jump permanently changes the contents of the program counter if certain program conditions exist, right? What it says is that normally if you see any program what we have, it has its own flow of execution, it has its own flow of execution there, right? Since it has its own flow of execution there, right? Normally we know that about the program counter. What the program counter does there, what the program counter does, it will hold the address of the next instruction to be executed here, right? And whenever there is a and whenever there is a and whenever there is a and whenever there is a, yes, everyone can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you see that program counter will always hold the address of the next instruction to be executed. Since we have a program which has its own flow, and take an example, if we have a jump instruction, and jump instruction may be conditional or unconditional, right? And whether it's conditional or unconditional, and if there is a jump instruction, and if that jump instruction is true, right? The jump instruction is true, what will happen? It will jump to the specified address. It will jump to the new address what we have, so that now the program counter, whatever the content the program counter had, that address has to be changed with the new address because of the jump instruction there, right? That's the reason I've mentioned here a jump instruction permanently changes the contents of the program counter if certain program conditions exist, right? Next, what we have, a call instruction. A call temporarily changes the program counter to allow another part of the program to run. Now, if you see here in the most of things, we have interrupts for microprocessor in order to get better response from any system, right? To get better response from any system, what we have, there are interrupts which are provided to the system there, right? And whenever there is an interrupt, what the microprocessor, the microcontroller does is that it will stop executing whatever the instruction it is doing. It will complete that execution of that instruction. And if take an example, if the interrupt is very important, right? Maybe take an example, if the response time is very important and it is given high priority for that interrupt, what the processor does is that it will stop executing the current instruction of the program, right? And it will jump to the interrupts. It will go and cater to the interrupts. In order to cater to the interrupts, what is written there? Interrupt service routine will be written. Interrupt service routine, ISR, will be written there, right? It will go to the ISR, right? And here, if you see the ISR, nothing but the the subroutines what we have, and these are very small code what we have it, right? Since it is very small code, since the processor is stopping the current execution of the current instruction and it has to jump to the ISR, what the contents of the program counter also needs to be changed there, because the PC will always hold the address of the next instruction to be executed. Since we have interrupt, now what will happen? Now the program counter should point to the ISR, interrupt service routine there. It has to point to the interrupt service routine so that the program counter will have a new address. Since the ISR is very small, it will execute that one, and again the control is returned to the program, to the current, the whichever program the processor was running before. So that again the program counter will have the address where it has to start executing. That's the reason if you return here, the call instruction what we have temporarily changes the program counter to allow another part of the program to run here, right? We'll understand this one as we proceed with this branch instructions here, right? Now, if you see what is the range of jump or call, the difference in bytes of the new address from the address in the program counter where the jump or call is located is called the range of the jump or call, right? Normally when you make a jump call, right, you specify where it has to jump, right? And what is the range for that jump, right? And if I specify a call also, what is the range for that call there? I'll take an example for this one. If the jump instruction is at address 0100H and the jump causes the program counter to become what? 010H, then the range of the jump is 20H bytes here, right? That is the range of the jump here, right? Depending on how the jumps are performed, whether it is 20 bytes, more than 20 bytes, right? How the jumps are performed, there are three types of jump range what we have it, right? If you see the jump instruction ranges, the jump or the call instruction ranges, what we have is relative range, short absolute range, and the third one is long absolute range here. We'll understand what are these range here, right? What is relative range? Here, the new address lies between plus 127D to minus 128D relatively from the address of the instruction following the jump there, following the jump. If the absolute address of the jump instruction changes, then the jump address changes also, but remains the same distance away from the jump instruction. Here, what you should understand is that the range of the jump is between what now? Plus 127D to minus 128D there. The jump is only between that range here, right? If you see this diagram, what we have, if you see the diagram, what we have is, this is the relative jump what we have. This is the range of the relative jump what we have from plus 125D plus from plus 125D to minus 128D here, right? And if you see the most of the instructions what we have, maybe we have jump carry, jump no carry, jump bit, jump no bit, jump bit and clear bit, right? Compare, right? The decrement jump instructions, jump instruction with respect to 0 and no 0, most of the instructions what we have falls under the category of relative jump here, right? It means that the jump is between only plus 125D to minus 128D there, right? And if you see the jumps are the only branch instructions that can use the relative range here, right? That can use the relative range here. And if you see the most of the programs what we write, the most of the programs what we have it are small programs, are very small programs. So I'll explain that one here. If you see the advantage of this one, the advantage of this one, only 1 byte of data need to be specified, because the range is between plus 125 D2 minus 125 D. It requires only 2 bytes. The first one is an opcode, the second one is an the address. The byte of the data what we have is nothing but the relative address there, and that relative address is between only between plus 125 D to minus 128 D, because we need only 8 bits in order to address between this range there, right? That is one of the advantage what we have with relative range. Next, the program that is written using relative jumps can be located anywhere in the program address space without reassembling the code to generate absolute addresses. Reassembling the code to generate absolute addresses. If you see, when I will explain the relative range here, I said if the absolute address of the jump instruction changes, then the jump address changes also, but remains the same distance away from the jump instruction. Take an example, I have a program and which is starting from 0000 H there, right? And take an example, the jump instruction is at 05, is at 0005 H there. And if that condition is satisfied, it has to jump to the line 0007 there, right? Now take an example that if the program has changed there, you added some code to that, you added some code to that now, right? So that now the jump instruction, instead of having it written at 0005, now if it is written at 0007 now, so that the jump will move to where now? Before it was moving to, it was jumping to 007. Now it will jump to 009 there. If we see the distance still remains how much? The 2 bytes what we have it. Since the distance is still the same, right? What will happen? You don't have to reassemble the code to generate the absolute address there. Right? That is one of the advantage with relative range here, right? Right? If you see, this is the relative, it means that the jump is only between from plus 125 D to minus 128 D here, right? And also the disadvantage with relative range is the jump range is between plus 125 D to minus 128 D bytes from the jump instruction. This is not a serious problem. Why it is not a serious problem? If you see most of the embedded program what we write, and we know that the embedded program or the real-time program what we write, those programs are have a dedicated function. They are designed to perform only one specific task. Since it is only one specific task, the program what you write is also very small code what we have, and there is all possibility that for the most of the time the code range what we have, if the jump, if I want to perform the jump also, depending on the condition, it is always between what? Plus 127 D to minus 127 D there. So that in that sense, this is not a serious issue with the relative range there, right? As I said here, right? Reassembling the code to generate the, you don't need to reassemble the code to generate the absolute address there. That is one of the advantage, and also it requires only byte to address the relative range, right? This is about the relative range. When I say relative range, what you understand by from here to here, and most of the jump instructions what we have, whether it is a bit jumps or byte jumps, right? It means that it will check for the byte condition, it will check for the bit condition here, right? Right? All these jump instructions mostly falls under the category of relative range here, right? We'll understand the much better with this instruction, what are these instructions are, right? Next, what we have is short absolute range. Here, what we have, if you see the program memory, what we have is 64 kilobytes of program memory, what we have. And here, what is done here is here the entire program memory is divided into logical divisions. And those logical divisions, we call it as pages. We call it as pages there, right? Now, if we see called as pages, if we see 8051, program memory is arranged as 2K pages. Since we have 64 kilobytes of program memory, right? And the logical division what we used in 8051 is 2 kilo pages. So that how many pages are there now? It is 32 pages are there. In hexadecimal, 28 pages are there. And the address associated with all those pages is shown in this table what we have. For page 0, it is starting from 0000 to 07FF there, right? For page 01, this is the address. For 1F page, it is F8002 FFFF. If you know FFFF is nothing but what? The last byte what we have, we get around 64 kilobytes. What we get? Around 65,000, some 353 or something, right? If you can calculate that one, that is the last byte what we have. It will address all the 64 kilobytes of program memory here, right? As I said here the program memory is divided into number of pages, and the size of each of the pages in 8051 is 2 kilobytes of page here. So that since it is 2 kilobytes of page here, so that how many pages pages are there in order to address 64 kilobytes of program memory? It is 32 pages are required here, right? 32 pages are required. And if you see in this one, the upper 5 bits of the program counter hold the page number. The upper 5 bits of the program counter hold the page number, and the lower 11 bits hold the address, and the lower 11 bits hold the address within each page there, right? If you see that it is represented by what? 2 bytes, right? 2 bytes what we have it. In 2 bytes what we have, if you see the 5 bytes, right? The upper 5 bytes is nothing but it represents the page number from 0. This is nothing but page number 00 here. And this is nothing but what? The address within each page. The range is from 000 to 7FF, right? It is like we have a notebook, and notebook it is made up of around 40 pages, and each 40 pages has around 40 lines in that. It is similar to that, right? So if we want to have an analogy between the memory and the notebook, what we use it there, right? The entire memory is divided into pages, similar to the entire notebooks are divided into number of pages, right? The collection of pages is nothing but 200 pages. Similarly, what we have is the 2 kilobytes of pages. What we have 32 kilobytes of pages. The collection of that is nothing but 64 kilobytes of program memory what we have. The upper 5 bits are nothing but represents the page number, and the lower 11 bits what we have represents the each of the lines or each of the bytes in that page, the locations in that page what we have it, right? Similarly, what we have 0, 1, so that you can see that the first all this is zeros, so that you have 4 zeros. Since it is 8, what we have, the page number will be what? 00001 there, right? The first 5 bits represents the page number, and the rest of the 12 bits, the 11 bits what we have represents what? Represents the address within each page there. So that if we see in short absolute range, what we have, the range is between 2K pages here. It is 2K pages is the range what we have it. Now, if you see the advantage with short absolute range is that allows jumps or calls over longer programming distance than does relative addressing. We know that relative addressing range is only for how much? The address which we can access using 8 bits or 1 bytes of the address there, right? That is plus 125D to minus 128D there. But here when it comes to absolute short range, the range is more. What is the range here? You can jump till 2 kilobytes of page there. 2 kilogates of page there. That is the range. It is much, the distance is much longer as compared to the relative addressing. We'll see that through the diagram here, right? If you see this diagram, what we have, if you see what we have, this, the diagram, what you can see here, this is nothing but relative limit is nothing but what? Relative range, what we have from 127D to minus 128D. But if you see this range, what we have, this is nothing but this page to the next page. What is the range for this one? 2 kilobytes there, right? That is the distance what we have, and this distance is longer compared to the relative range what we have it here. You can see one of the unconditional instruction what we have is AJMP, which is a short absolute jump there, right? Which is an unconditional jump what we have it. We can have the range between 2 kilobytes here, and this 2 kilobytes distance is much larger or the longer as compared to the relative limit here, right? Whenever the next instruction occurs in next page, some assemblers might face problems when there is a jump backwards. The programmer must take care of this thing. One of the disadvantage with the short absolute range is that, take an example that what we have is, this is the limit what we have it, right? And the page is something like this one, right? And the jump instruction is at the last address, is the last line of the page what we have, the last byte what we have it, and it will, and the jump will go to the next instruction. If the jump is to the next instruction and that next instruction is in the next page, right, the assembling is not an issue. But if the jump is to the previous page, right, if there is a jump to the previous page, to the previous address what we had, or to the previous page what we have, then assembling is an issue there. As a programmer, we need to take care of those situations. If it is forward, there might not be an issue, but if it is backward, there could be some issues with some assemblers. In order to solve that one, the programmer has to take care of that, right? It means that what we can have much longer programs, and much longer programs within 2 kilobytes, so we can have the jump instructions there, right? This is about the short absolute range. What is the range for short absolute range? It is 2 kilo pages, right? 2 kilo pages, right? Next, what we have is long absolute range. Addresses that can access the entire program space from 0000H to FFFFH use long range addressing. What is this program space till 4F? It is nothing but 64 kilobytes of memory, right? The range is from 0 to 64 kilobytes of memory what we have. You can access, you can have the jump range from 0 to 64 kilobytes of memory here, right? So that if you write a long program also, right, we can with the help of long absolute range, we can write the jump instruction, so that from 64 kilobytes you can move directly to the 0 there, right? You can have range between, you can have the jump instructions between this range here, and you can see that the long absolute range have a longer distance compared to the short absolute range, and short absolute range is having a longer distance as compared to the relative range there, right? And if you see the what is the advantage with this one is, you can access the entire address space. What is address space we have? We know that the program memory in 8051 is 64 kilobytes of memory what we have. We can access the entire 64 kilobytes of memory there, right? We can have that one. And also the disadvantage with this one is requires more bytes of code to specify, and are relocatable only at the beginning of 64 kilo pages. What you understand by this one in the sense, if you see the long jumps what we have, the long jumps requires 3 bytes or 3 bytes instructions. The first one is an opcode, and the rest of the two operands what we have, right? The 2 bytes what we have, that is nothing but that will specify the address there. You know, you need more number of bits to access the address space here. And also if you can see that, and a relocatable only at the beginning of 64 kilobyte. If I want to relocate, it can start only at the beginning of 64 kilobytes there, right? Okay, this is about the different range the jumps of the call instructions can have. The first one is a relative, the second one is a short absolute range, the third one is a long absolute range there, right? We studied what are these ranges and what are the advantage and disadvantage with this, right? And now if you see, you can see all the jump instruction ranges in this diagram, right? If you can see here, what we have is a relative range what we have. This is the relative jump or the relative call what we have. And if you see, this is one page. This one page range is nothing but what we have. This is nothing but absolute short range here. And what is this range what we have? Right, from 00 to FFH. This range is nothing but our long absolute range here. Right? As I said here, most of the jump instructions falls under the category of relative range here. Now we'll study the different jump instructions here, right? The first, as I said, I mentioned as in the contents, the first what we'll study is unconditional jumps. What do you mean by unconditional jump instructions? The unconditional jump is a jump in which control is transferred unconditional to the target location. It is transferred unconditional to the target location, right? We go through the second statement. Unconditional jumps do not test any bit or byte to determine whether the jump should be taken. The jump is always taken. If you see this one, what it says is it's an unconditional jump. There is no condition as such. Normally what we do when I say condition jump, if the content of some of the register is equal to 0, that is a condition. If the register content is 0, then only jump to the address which is specified there, right? And jump only if the carry bit is set. Jump only if the auxiliary carry bit is set. Jump if 0, jump if not 0. There is a condition associated with it. But when it comes to unconditional jumps, we are not checking for any of the bits, and also we are not checking for any of the byte to determine whether I need to jump or not. If I just mention unconditional jump, JMP instruction there, which is an unconditional jump, the jump is always taken there and it is not dependent on any of the conditions there. That is what you mean by unconditional jump. These jumps can jump to any location in the memory. That is, all jump ranges are found here. It means we can have relative range, we can have short absolute range, and also we can have long absolute range here, right? If you see the mnemonic for this one, what we have is JMP. JMP is nothing but JMP address is nothing but unconditional jump there. Jump to the address ADD are there, right? You're not checking for the end condition, and as part of the program, if you return something like JMP address, right, it means that the program controller will have the address of this ADD are there, right? And if you see this one, as I said here, there are since we can have all the 3 jump ranges here, we can have all the 3 jump ranges. We have 3 instructions associated with JMP. The first one what we have is AJMP. AJMP, yes, ADD. What do you mean by AJMP, yes, ADD? Jump to the absolute short range address, yes, ADD, no flags are affected. With the help of these instructions, the no flags are affected here. And similarly, what we have it here, LJ MP L A D. What it says is jump to the absolute long range address LADD, no flags are affected. With the help of this JMP instructions, there is no impact to the flags there. Next, what we have SJMP RADD, jump to the relative address RAD here. As I said here, since we can have three ranges, the JMP instructions can have three range here, right? This yes address is a short absolute range, long absolute range, and RA is nothing but relative address range there, right? And next, what we have something called as a NOP. NOP is nothing but no operation. Do nothing and go to the next instruction. And if because of this usage of instruction, no flags are affected. Normally, what we have is in order to, since the system has to wait for some events, right, to take place, it has to wait. We write NOP instructions there. When I write NOP instruction, the CPU is running this NOP instruction there. It means that some time is spent in executing this NOP instruction there, right? That time will, what we can use that as a software loops for delaying the, for writing the delay loops, we can use the NOP instructions there, right? And take an example that maybe since you written NOP, and in future if you want to write something, some additional code to that, you can remove this one and you can write the code there, right? That's the reason we include a NOP, but it does not, when I say NOP, it is not performing any operation there, right? And if you see, because of this unconditional jump instruction, what we have, no flags are affected here. No flags are affected. If we, the most familiar instruction what we have is SJMP. As part of our program, we have used SJMP instruction. It says that, in fact, normally we say simple jump. Simple jump is nothing but it is a relative jump. The jump is between plus 127 D to minus 128 D there, right? The byte, the 1 byte address what we have is nothing but the relative address there, right? These are unconditional jumps, right? Next, we have something called as a conditional jumps, and conditional jumps could be what? A condition on the byte or condition on the bit. First, we'll study the conditional jumps, which is dependent on the byte here, right? If you see what you mean by byte jumps here, the jump instructions that test bytes of data. If the condition that is tested is true, the jump is taken. If the condition is false, the instruction after the jump is executed. All byte jumps are relative to the program counter. What do you mean by all byte jumps are relative to the program counter here, right? They have relative range there. All these byte conditional jumps what we have relative range there, right? What you understand, the first, the condition that is tested is true, the jump is taken there, right? If the condition is false, the instruction after the jump is executed. What we see here is, we see whether the condition is true or false. If the condition is true, you perform the jump, and whatever the address you specify in front of the jump, the program counter or the execution will go to that, the specified new address to perform the next execution there, right? And if the condition is false, it will go to the next instruction, right? It will go to the execution of the next instruction. Now we'll understand what are those conditions there, right? If you see what the condition what we have is, these are the mnemonics what we have. CJNE. What is this CJNE? Compare jump if not equal. Compare jump if not equal. What not equal here? You're comparing the contents of accumulator with the contents of the direct address what we have. And if these two contents are not equal, then only jump. Where it has to jump? It has to jump to RADD. Why we have written it as RADD? Because it is relative address, relative range what we have it, right? Which is relative address what we have. That's the reason we have written it as RADD. If you see here, we have written all the byte jumps are relative to the program counter. That's the reason we have written it as RADD here. Compare the contents of A register with the contents of the direct address. If they are not equal, then jump to the relative address, right? And because of this comparison, the carry flag will be set. And when the carry flag will be set, if A, the contents of A is less than the contents what we have it in this direct address there. In fact, if you see for data transfer instruction, we have used, I've explained this instruction, how this instruction is working. For finding the largest number, the smallest number, arranging in ascending order and descending order, we did use this SJNE instruction, how this instruction is working, how the carry flag is setting here, right? Similarly, what we have, compare jump if not equal, if the contents of accumulator is not equal to the immediate number what we have. If it is not equal, jump to the R address there, right? And if the contents of accumulator is less than the immediate number, set the carry flag there, right? This is a condition what we have. The condition is what we have. It is checking for the equality of the contents here for accumulator and the address. It is checking for the equality of the contents, whether the contents are equal or not. This is the content what we have, the content of accumulator and the immediate number. Similarly here what we have, compare jump not equal RR comma hash n here. You see, this is how, this is the conditional jump. In the next class, we'll continue with this one and I will cover examples related to this one. Everyone, thank you.
Okay.